Welcome to the inaugural Indiana 50/50 Women on Boards conversation on board diversity. And as we lead the way to diverse and gender balanced boards, I'm Kirsten Petras, the co chair of Indiana's conversation this year. And today we are joined by several people who see the importance in bringing this much needed conversation about the value and benefits of diversifying the corporate boardroom and the need to provide educational opportunities to those professional candidates who hold aspirations of continuing their career journey on a path to a corporate board seat. During the first hour of today's event and conversation, we're excited to hear about the data, both national and on a local level, the information that shows us where we've been, where we are, and where we can go. Then you're going to hear from an esteemed VIP panel who share their insights, expertise, and thoughts on the task at hand. In the second hour, though, we are enthusiastic about your personal experience as you join breakout sessions with your own director coaches to take a step in your path to the boardroom. As we get started today, I'd like to introduce my co-chair, Shannon Bear. After several years of being aware of 50/50's work, formerly known as 2020 Women on Board, and what they were doing in other states, when the events went virtual last year for reasons that don't need to be said, we were able to join the Los Angeles conversation. And afterward, especially as we were talking about our experience in our director coaches breakout session, Shannon said, we need this conversation in Indiana. And I agreed. I thought for sure, given the amount of companies that are headquartered here in Indiana, several Indiana-based companies are already making strides in diversifying their boardrooms. And the state of Indiana is vested in being an employer-employee of choice state, and they've been taking measures to stand out. But more than that, Shannon and I already knew that we had relationships with female friends and professional colleagues who aspire to this type of career trajectory, and they live and breathe the values of being better together. So as Shannon and I subscribe to the adage that it takes a village, today is no different. Many of you are here because of the support of your companies being aligned with providing opportunity to you and enrich your own experiences. And by sponsoring today's conversation, they put their words to action. So without their sponsorship, today would not be as impactful as we promise it to be. So we'd like to thank CLA, Gibson, Oak Street Funding, Toyota, the state of Indiana, Anthem and Linkage, and our two-time platinum sponsor, Capital Group, as they have all taken steps to ensure that you're able to participate. We'd like a special mention for the advocacy and recognition measures taken by the Indianapolis Executive Women in Finance Group, who brought some awareness, and in that awareness brought some of you here today. But we are also grateful for our global sponsors. As demonstrated, the major international companies getting involved and believing in ways that contribute to the results the 50/50 campaign is striving to achieve.
Thank you, Kirsten. And you're so right. It's these amazing sponsors, but we wouldn't have gotten to this sponsorship level and this participation without the efforts of our Indiana team that you talked about. Earlier this year, we built the Indiana Leadership Committee for our inaugural year. And without these amazing women leaders, some who we knew before we got started and some who we met along the way, you would not be able to be here today. And we wouldn't have felt so amazingly supported. So what you're going to learn in that breakout session is really the importance of networking and how it's critical to accomplishing career advancement. And that's important because it's not just building your network, but leveraging it, making those asks. So today, from all this heavy lifting, this leadership committee is what was able to make this a reality. Not only that, we brought an amazing level of awareness through social media, and it really had an impact that we hadn't understood until the actions were taken. So we want to give a special thank you to Elizabeth Ritz of Ritz Communications for her media efforts with her team, and Holly Bolton of Three Chord Marketing, who really led our social media work, along with the amazing thank yous to the effort that this team put together to find us panelists and sponsors and director coaches. So it is important to know that all of this, while we're experiencing it today, is not just a one-day event. We intend to continue this conversation, and we encourage you to join the groups that we're creating online, as well as continued opportunities to train and advance your path and journey to the boardroom, which we'll tell you a little bit more about at the end of the session today. But right now, let's get started with the conversation. We are so fortunate to be joined by Betsy Berkmer-Crudere. She is the CEO of 50/50 Women on Boards, and she's also an owner of the retained executive search Berkmer Clayton, and an author of 2 books, The Board Game and Winning the Board Game. So Betsy's going to share with us the data that Kirsten had mentioned on what's going on in the nation, specifically what's happening here in Indiana, and what progress we've made and what's still to be done. So Betsy, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Shannon, for that gracious introduction. I am Betsy Berkmer-Crudere, and proud to be the CEO of 50/50 Women on Boards for the last 3 years. And of course, we started back in 2010. And our goal now is to reach 50% of all corporate board seats, when women will hold half of all corporate board seats in the US and, in fact, globally. So special thanks to our chairs, our co-chairs, Kirsten and Shannon, and the leadership committee in Indiana for really launching this whole effort. When we first heard from these 2 remarkable co-chairs who wanted to volunteer and get the event going here in Indiana, we thought, well, do you think there's really, really interest there? And of course there is a great deal of interest, and corporate sponsorship as well. Thank you all for participating in the audience today. Indiana is one of 30, that's 30 events that are part of our global conversation on board diversity, attended this year by almost 6,000 registrants throughout the country. And we have all these events that started November 3rd and will be concluding this Friday, November 19th, with a special closing celebration. And all of you who are in the audience and registered are invited to the closing celebration. That's 11 o'clock Pacific time on Friday. And we also have international cities, of course, in our network, and among the 30, Toronto and Athens were brand new this year. And we also, for several years, have had London, which was yesterday, Madrid on Monday, and Mexico City last week. I feel like I've been I've never left my chair in my home studio, but I feel I've been all over the world in the last 2.5 weeks. So let's take a look at our statistics. Quarterly and annually, 50/50 Women on Boards uses the data provided by our partner Equilar to release our Gender Diversity Index report, where we analyze the percentage of women on boards nationwide by state and industry sector. And we also report on the percentage of women selected for new board seats. And based on those who self-identify, we report on the race and ethnicity of all directors. So let's look at the year-over-year progress nationwide and here in Indiana, which is looking good. So nationwide, we are ecstatic to report that for the first time in history, women have reached 25% board seats held by women in the Russell 3000. That's 3,000 companies, far more than the Fortune 1000 or the Fortune 500. 3,000 companies in the U.S., the largest companies in the U.S. 25.6% of those board seats are now held by women, and that's 3% higher than last year. As you'll see, the red bar at the bottom line is the 25.6, and last year we were at 22.6. So 3% higher year over year, and that's the biggest year over year increase in the last 5 years. By the way, back in 2010, when we started tracking the numbers of women on boards, the number of the Russell 3000 was only 10%. So we have made significant increases, but we are only halfway to our goal of 50%. So if we continue to increase at this rate, we estimate we will reach 50% by 2029, but maybe sooner with all of your help. So in Indiana, women hold 24.1% of the Russell 3000 company board seats, and that's moving up from last year. It was only 21.4%. So that's a 3-point increase as well. And Indiana is very much on the forefront of a little lower than the national average, but not by much. So you'll see that there are 426 total directors, and 96 of those are women. Now, nationwide company rankings, we list in our report, we list those companies as gender balanced, that have 50% or more women on their boards, and that we also call out and honor companies that have 3 or more women on their boards, 3+, and 2 and 1 and 0 we track. So as you'll see, we're really pleased that 7% of the companies in the US, that's 215 out of almost 3,000 companies, 7% are already gender balanced. So it can't be that hard to do if 7% are already there. And you'll see on the next bar, the increase of the companies with more than 3 women on their boards is significant. We're now at 34% of the companies have 3 or more women on their boards, and that's nationwide. So 215, going back to gender balance, it's 215 out of the 3,000 companies are actually what we call GB. And then the numbers that are decreasing on down the chart are important to us, because that means if there are fewer with just 2 women and fewer with just 1 woman, that's in the right direction. And we're really looking for 0 women, 0 companies that have no women on their board. So in nationwide, we're down to 4% of companies that still don't have any women on their boards. Hopefully they'll get the message very soon. And back to Indiana. In Indiana, we do have 5% of companies that are gender balanced. However, it's a decrease from 9% last year. Not quite sure why. 2 out of the 40 companies that are in the Russell 3000 that are based in Indiana are gender balanced. But look at the next bar, which is very encouraging. The number of companies with 3 or more women has increased to 38%, which was only 23% last year. 38% is this is as of June 30th, by the way, and we are now measuring companies and tracking companies every quarter. So the number of companies with just 1 woman, and happily the number of companies with 0 women are very low. However, there's still 3% of companies this year that have 0 women in Indiana, 0 women on their board. So we'll need to start working on those companies to be able to increase the numbers. So how many women directors will it take for Indiana to become gender balanced? Not that many, really, from 92 to 171. And the lower number is based on those boards that would, where a woman would have to replace a man in order to reach gender balance. Or the 171 is based on the number of women needed if a seat is added to a board, which is really what companies are doing nationwide, actually adding seats to the board to bring on new women corporate directors. But 92 to 171, I think you can accomplish that in Indiana, and we'll be looking for great increases next year. And then lastly, we wanted to share with you that we track, and our goal is not only to achieve 50% of the board seats held by women nationwide, but also to achieve 20% of all board seats held by women of color. And the numbers currently are very low. Now, only 17% of all directors report or self-identify their racial and ethnic background. And of those, 12% of all directors are people of color. Men of color, only 7% of the board seats. Women of color, only 4% of the board seats nationwide. So we encourage all board directors and people who want to be board members soon to enter their profiles with Board Edge, with Equilar's Board Edge, and you'll see the link in the chat. And through that process, you can self-identify racial and ethnic background and help to develop, so that we can help to develop the numbers and increase the numbers of women of color on corporate boards. Lastly, this slide shows in a graphic and dramatic sense the low numbers of women and men of color on boards, currently broken down by the racial and ethnic background. So long way to go, but we're on the way. So we are delighted that we're here in Indiana. Thank you very much. Now I'll turn the microphone back over to Shannon and Kirsten.
Betsy, thank you so much for sharing that important information. And like the old advertisement said, we've come a long way, baby, and the time is now to do even more. So as she said, all it takes is 92 to 171 qualified women candidates to achieve gender balanced boardrooms across the Russell 3000 companies here in Indiana. And hey, most of you are listening today. So enter your info in that link in the chat, become known as an interested candidate. An even greater opportunity to fully diversify the boardroom by filling seats with qualified candidates who are currently underrepresented across the spectrum. But we are not that surprised, because we knew the entire state of Indiana was moving itself forward to realize the need and benefits for diversification from the executive level to the C-suites to the boardroom. And along this ride, our assumptions became reality when we met Kara Herring. Kara is the Chief Equity, Inclusion, and Opportunity Officer for Governor Holcomb in the state of Indiana. And we knew that we needed her to be with us today. And so I am excited, along with Shannon, to welcome Kara to the screen. Kara is about to facilitate what promises to be a captivating and informative conversation among our VIP panelists today. Good morning, Kara. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Kirsten. Thank you for having me. Shannon, thank you so much. And Betsy, thank you for that amazing data that you just shared. I am so honored to lead this discussion, and we have only a little bit of time, so let's jump into it. I'm going to start off by introducing our esteemed panelists, and I am so excited to share the virtual stage with them today. First up, we have Ann Nobles. Ann Nobles is a lawyer by training and spent her career at Eli Lilly and Company in a variety of roles, culminating in Senior Vice President for Enterprise Risk Management and Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer. Since retirement, she has served on a number of not-for-profit boards and currently serves as a member and former chair of the Board of Directors of Indiana Health and member and current chair of Citizens Energy Group. Welcome, Ann. I'm so excited to dig into this conversation. Next up, we have Kristen Sherman. Kristen Sherman is the CEO of Covina Therapeutics, a biotech company developing therapeutics for HPV-related infections and cancers. Kristen's current board service includes her role as the incoming board chair for Community Health Network, congratulations, and chair of the network's Audit, Compliance, and Finance Committee. Kristen is also a board member and chair of the Audit Committee for the Lacey Diversified Industries. Welcome, Kristen.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Darlene Slaughter. Hello, Darlene. Darlene is the Chief Diversity Officer for the March of Dimes. She has worked in the diversity space since 2008. And from Fannie Mae to United Way Worldwide to March of Dimes, she's held these leadership roles. Darlene's had full circle moments, and what an awesome sponsor, and had an awesome sponsor that provided her with significant opportunities. Diversity, and I love this, Darlene, you said this, diversity is more than just your job. It's your way of being. I love that. Thank you so much. And last, but certainly not least, he is a little bit outnumbered, but that's okay. He's with friends. We welcome Rob Wallstrom, the CEO of Vera Bradley. Rob Wallstrom is an experienced leader who is focused on positioning organizations for purpose-driven success and building companies with strong cultures that positively impact all stakeholders. Wallstrom has led Vera Bradley Incorporated as president and CEO since 2013, successfully executing the company's business transformation while also, I love this, championing corporate social responsibility, something that we are challenging more organizations to do in this state. Associate engagement and philanthropy initiatives. Wallstrom has been an advocate for diversity throughout his career, both at Vera Bradley Incorporated and previously at Saks Fifth Avenue. And at Vera Bradley, over half of the vice presidents are female, yes, and they are proudly one of the few Russell 3000 companies that have 60% female board representation. Welcome, Rob. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Kara.
Okay, now that you've learned a bit about this amazing and brilliant, esteemed panel of just excellent leaders, let's start to tap into their intellectual capital. Get your pen and paper out because they're going to drop some really great nuggets. So let's get started. Kristen, I want to start with you. And this is a question really related to where we are right now and what we've just experienced over the last 18 months. We know the pandemic caused more women than men to leave the workplace. And McKinsey reported that since April, 40% of employees surveyed are likely to leave their current job in the next 3 to 6 months without even having a new job ready to go. What strategies is Covina implementing to help minimize that employment gap for women in the workplace? And what are you all doing to reshape the culture and organization to retain and attract that new talent?
Well, I love this question as a working mom who has raised and kind of on the tail end of raising 3 kids. But there are certainly a few key strategies I've used over the years in various organizations that I think are important to attract talent regardless of gender, but benefit women even more. So, women want the same career opportunities as men, right? But they need flexibility to juggle. And really, there's a lot of juggling going on without a doubt. So first and foremost, and it sounds so simple, but it's provide that flexibility whenever possible. So there's a saying that some of my team members make fun of, but it's called midnight in your PJs. And what that means is I don't care when or where you get the work done, within reason, of course, but it is about the work. And that saying challenges leaders in the organization to think about how much flexibility they can offer their team members. It doesn't work for all jobs, obviously, but it's a mentality. It's a way of thinking about how can I structure jobs and provide flexibility that work for my employees. Obviously, the pandemic was wonderful in terms of challenging us to think differently, but we need to hang on to that and make sure we retain that mentality about flexibility. In addition to flexibility, though, you have to have communication. And that goes both ways. So I need to be communicating as a leader when I need people in certain meetings, when I need them at certain events so they can plan accordingly. And they need to be communicating with their leaders about when they need help, when they need coverage, what they're trying to juggle. So it's a two-way communication without a doubt. And then third one I love, measure output, not FaceTime. I mean, I'm probably showing my age here, but it should be all about measuring what you're contributing, what's your work, what are you delivering. Again, I don't care how or when it gets done within reason, but let's focus on the output, which is really what we hire folks to do. And then final comment, I like to talk to women especially about the concept of blending rather than balance. And I know that sounds a little strange, but to me, when folks used to talk to me about balance, it implied that there was some ideal equilibrium I was supposed to achieve, like this perfect balance between work and family and kids and all. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. It's a blend. One day work needs to be my priority. The next day it might be family or kids or personal. So I like to use the word blend and talk to women about how you blend every role that you're juggling. And again, that comes back to providing flexibility, having a lot of communication both ways, measuring output, and doing all of that in order to attract and retain talent of all genders.
That is fantastic. I love that. And the last piece really is what I kind of want to dig into a little bit with Darlene, because when you think about blend versus balance, and you think about all of the things that Kristen just named, there is a bit of complexity that comes along with that when you think about the intersection of race and gender. And so I want to throw this question to you, because as we're reshaping the workplace culture, thinking about how to set women up for success, how can we also be thinking about how women of color and the complexities that come with race and gender, how they experience the workplace and the unique challenges that exist, and how can we better prepare them for C-suite positions or for board representation? Because there are some unique challenges there.
Yeah, thank you. And that, Kristen, that was a great,
Yes.
a great response. I think we have to really pay attention to the complexities and the intersectionalities of people in your workplace. And, many times cultures want to believe that everyone is the same. We all work for the same company. We have the same opportunities. We get our jobs done the same way. And that's just not true. And you don't really get at the complexities until you actually start having conversations, right? So you start, I always tell people you can start with the blank screen And you can get data, right? You can put the data on the page, and it's like how many performance reviews and how many people are we hiring and how many people are exiting. But as soon as you add race onto those numbers, and gender, it becomes a very different story. So organizations really have to look at that data and do the analytics and then say, well, why is this happening with one group that's not happening with another group? And how do we understand that? And the way to understand it is to really begin to have conversations. So use the data to really drive the direction you need to go in. And then I think for women and women of color in the workplace, it's also, it's a building a level of confidence. Many times we are not given the opportunities, we are not asked, and then we start to believe that perhaps we don't know enough, we don't know how to. And so we never step up sometimes to the plate to say, this is what I want to do, and this is why I want to do it, and this is what I can do. So in the workplace, not only are we thinking about how to use the data, but we also have to build a muscle within the employee base and within the women's base and within women of color to say, you should be in the room.
I love that.
Yeah.
The organizations have to take some accountability for doing the research, but we as individuals working in those cultures have to find our voice and speak up and ask for what we want. And, this is actually a perfect segue to Rob. You all did something over at Vera Bradley called Project Quilt. And I know I was going to give you a different question, to start with, but this is actually right in line with what Darlene was talking about. Can you talk about the work that you all have done to really shift the culture within Vera Bradley?
Yeah, no, we'd love to. I mean, Project Quilt, we really launched a year ago. And what we really did is all of the social movements were going on. We wanted to pause and ask ourselves, what are we doing well? What do we need to do better? And on one hand, it was really encouraging when we talked to our employees, and I did a lot of one-on-ones around with our 3,000 employees in the company. We got great feedback on the company and that there was a sense of inclusion, but we still felt that there was an opportunity to do more. But when we dove into this, what we wanted to do, we picked this word Project Quilt because how do we bring everybody together? And what we loved about the quilt is we thought it was a great picture. Obviously, it works with Vera Bradley because of our quilt heritage, but this idea of different parts stitched together into one thing that is more powerful because of that diversity. And so that was really the beginning of launching Project Quilt. And we did exactly what Darlene was talking about, is open up conversations. Mm-hmm. And I thought, a lot of this has been about people trying to train and all these things. What we found was actually the most powerful was giving people a platform to share their story. And I thought what would happen is that the people that would be hearing about different people's experiences would learn the most, would bring people together. What we actually found is the opportunity for people to share their individual story was so empowering to them. And that they were so surprised by how people embraced their story and embraced them, that they became more powerful, more engaged, had a larger voice, had more input. And what I saw, a lot of it was that lack of sharing and opening up the conversation was holding people back. And we've been able to make a lot of progress just on that alone. And then separately, having to be very intentional, I think watching the data, again, what Darlene was talking about is how do we watch all the data? How do we really make a change? Because the world is changing fast. Yeah. And I believe as a company and looking at the future and looking at 10 years from now, we have to be preparing our companies for what 10 years from now looks like, not what today looks like.
Absolutely. That forward thinking, forecasting that we're doing is critical. And one of those things that relates to that is thinking outside of our own box, our own circle, just within corporate. And Anne, I want to turn to you. You've had such a substantive career, not only in corporate, but also in the government sector. And recently I joined Governor Holcomb and Clay Robbins of the Lilly Endowment at a dinner where Claudia Cummins, who is the Indiana Philanthropy Alliance CEO, facilitated a discussion on cross-industry, cross-sector collaboration in the DE&I space. And I really want to get your take on this because of the work experience that you have, but should more companies start to consider the collaborative partnerships with government and the philanthropic sector to really start to develop diversity and inclusion best practices to take our organizations to the next level? And what does that look like, in your opinion?
There's a lot of opportunity for that kind of collaboration. I think one thing that's encouraging in Indiana is that last year, the Central Indiana Corporate Partnership paired with the Indy Chamber of Commerce and the Urban League here in Indianapolis to form the Business Equity for Indy effort. And there are 30 to 35 companies, major companies in our community, come together with major resources to look at a number of issues related to Blacks and people of color in our community. It includes hiring and promotion. It includes diversity suppliers, health inequities, policy issues that are important for the business community to be focused on. And all of this work is coming together through both collaboration and companies addressing their own individual needs, but sharing their approaches with other companies in an effort to get more involved. And I think it's been impressive what companies have been taking a lead in this area. Lilly has been very involved. IU Health is involved, and the CEO of Citizens Energy, Jeff Harrison, is one of the co-leaders of this effort. So I am very hopeful that this will yield tangible results in our community.
I think they have an amazing blueprint. And if you're not familiar with the Business Equity for Indy initiative, please look it up. And Rob, I want to jump back to you because I'm going to be in Fort Wayne tomorrow, spending some time with some folks there, some of whom are part of United Front Fort Wayne initiative, which is very similar to what we're working on here in Indianapolis. Can you talk a little bit about what you all are doing in that region of the state?
Yeah, no, United Front is very exciting. Vera Bradley, we were able to jump on early and be a sponsor. But what I love about what United Front is doing is talking about shared humanity and how do we bring the community together? How do we address the equity issues that are needed, but really stitch everybody together to make us one united community? And we think that's a huge opportunity. Personally, I believe it's a huge opportunity for Fort Wayne. I think it's an opportunity for Indiana. I think Indiana's got an opportunity to really lead the country in economic development, but diversity is going to be an important part of that. It's going to be really important that has to be one thing we're really known for us to succeed in the next, decade and 2 decades ahead.
It's critical, and it's one of the big initiatives that we're looking at from the State House is how we increase diverse entrepreneurship and how we look at business opportunities to bring new talent and keep new talent in the state. Not only working with higher education, but thinking about recruiting differently and poaching some of those people that might be outside of the borders of Indiana. I want to shift to something that Darlene and Kristen both brought up to me in separate kind of conversations, but we were talking about women leaders and sometimes the trepidation that exists with us jumping into a new opportunity that could be very unknown. And I will tell you, I just experienced that recently. I was at the University of Notre Dame for nearly a decade in a very comfortable role. And the governor offered me this opportunity to serve on his cabinet in a position that has never existed before. And I took the leap into the unknown, and I'm so glad that I did. But there are days it's scary. But I want you to talk about, and we'll start with Darlene, just why it's important for women to put themselves out there and take those chances and what types of opportunities that opens up for us.
Yeah, thank you. And I have to smile because I tell everyone all the time, I say yes more than I say no. And I've had many people say, well, how did you get involved in that? And I was like, I don't know. I said yes. But I would tell you a really short story. I got a call from someone I didn't know. They wanted to, it was a program where they were bringing women and people over from the Middle East to learn about diversity, women's empowerment to the United States. And I got this call to say, will you take a fellow in your company for a month and a half? This is their first time coming to the United States, and you have to be a chaperone. I had no idea who it was. It just sounded like a great opportunity, right? So I said, yes. I was like, of course I could do that. And at the end of the program, what I didn't know when I said yes to that program is that they would choose a company to go to the Middle East, to the country where the person was from, to then represent the work that we do here in the US to different companies in the Middle East. So I got a chance, all expenses paid, to go to Cairo, Egypt. And it was like one of the best experiences. And I had no idea that was going to happen, right? And so I think, and there were people who were like, you're going to go to the Middle East? Aren't you afraid? Like, what are you doing? You can't do that. And I just thought, how many times do we talk ourselves out of opportunities? How many times do we won't raise our hand because, and forgive me, Rob, but say this, a guy will have 10% of the knowledge, but that will be 100% of everything that he knows, and he will go for it. Like he's been doing that for all of his life, right? A woman will only have 10% of that job that she doesn't know, and she will talk herself out of that opportunity because she's afraid that they're going to focus on the 10%, regardless of the 90% that she does know. And so I try to tell, and especially young women, like say yes more than you say no. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but it'll take you down a road and it will expose you to people who can see a bigger vision for yourself. And that's, I think for me, it's been powerful, and I've done my career. I mean, I've done the grunt work. I've done the work that everybody's like, you're at this level, you should not be doing that. And I was like, well, it has to be done. Somebody has to do it. But then someone sees it and says, you know what, you've got an ethic that is really good, and I need that on my team. And then there comes the next opportunity and the next opportunity.
I love it. Kristen, you alluded to some of this too, and you talked about, feeling ill prepared for a role, but taking the risk. It's going to be challenging. And you've held a variety of roles, COO and now CEO, and you have a breadth of experience and knowledge. Can you talk about and encourage some of our listeners to take that leap, take that risk?
Well, some might say I haven't decided what I want to be when I grow up, but who said you have to decide? So I'm actually on my 7th company, a lot of it driven by some M&A activities, but you're right, I've held a variety of roles, everything from pure finance to pure HR to chief operating officer over areas that were brand new to me to stepping into a CEO assignment. And every single one of those was a new opportunity, chance to grow, chance to develop. But it all comes from just being open, taking the call, having the conversation. I remember I picked up the phone for one conversation, and probably not my most professional moment, but I literally burst out laughing when someone explained an opportunity and said, are you interested? And I literally started laughing, saying, first of all, why would you consider me for that? And I don't even know if I know what that is. So, but you want to be open. You want to have the conversation. And what you realize is that people see things in you before you see them in yourself.
Yes.
So trust that. Be open and try, because the one thing you know for sure is if you don't try, you'll never know if it could have been a success and if you could have been, happy and accomplished and really gotten a lot out of it. So just be open, take the call, have the conversation, raise your hand and try, but probably don't laugh. Maybe that's not I can offer. Appropriate given the role. So.
I love it. Sometimes people see things in you before you see it in yourself. And that is so true of so many women leaders who, Darlene, you talked about this, trying to find our voice and speak up and ask for what we want. And Anna, I really want to jump to you if you don't mind, because you have held such substantive roles on boards as chair and some heavy hitting boards. I want to talk a little bit about, for the women in the virtual audience who are thinking about board participation, how do women prepare themselves for these types of positions? What types of skill sets should they be playing up? How should they lean into the careers that they've had to highlight how they can be an asset to board representation?
Boards, I think, are increasingly looking for a variety of skills and abilities, and they are looking for people who offer multiple touch points to those skills and abilities, diversity. I'm increasingly hearing boards talking about age as a point of diversity, because everybody's the same old age on a board. And I say that being one of the old people on boards, then you're not getting the perspective of younger people, and you could be missing important changes. So I think you can highlight all of those inherent characteristics that you offer, but boards are also looking for expertise, whether it's a CPA or JD or somebody who is an expert on HR issues or manufacturing, technology. Any expertise that you've developed at your company may be an asset on a board, and you need to highlight it. And if you get a chance to work in different parts of the company as I did at Lilly, then you can offer several different perspectives that can end up being very helpful. I ran a product development team at Lilly, for example, and that experience overseeing clinical trial implementation and development was something that was useful to the IU Health Board. So I think just reflecting on your resume and looking for those areas that would be of particular interest to a company can really make the difference.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I'm taking some notes myself and thinking about all the different random positions I've held to get to where I am today and how I can highlight some of those skills. You know, Rob, I want to turn to you, and this is a challenging question, and I really want to get your take on this as CEO of Vera Bradley, and you've run other companies. When you think about board representation, oftentimes the folks that are chosen to participate on boards have 25, 30, 40 years of experience as C-suite level executives. And sometimes that automatically disqualifies quite a few people of color and some women because they're just not in those seats within corporate America. And so how do companies, you know, keep that eye on the prize of being racially and ethnically diverse with their boards, understanding that it may mean taking a risk on someone who only has 10 years in the C-suite? I mean, what does that look like, and what recommendations do you have?
Well, I think there's two different parts of that question, right? One is just there is a fact of most boards are made up of people with multi-years of C-suite experience, right? So part of what we have to do as companies is invest to make sure that we're raising up that next level of leadership. And that's why there's a little bit of lag there. But I think from board, you know, this has been important for us not only to have a majority female board, which we do because of Vera Bradley and who our customer is, but also making sure we bring in diversity on the board. And we just recently were able to hire a incredibly talented executive, Nancy Twine, who joined our board, and she happened to check a lot of the boxes that you're talking about. She's 30 years old. We have age diversity. She's female. She's also Black. But more importantly to us, she also was an entrepreneur who built a great business, great story. So her experience was building her own company. And that was really important to us to bring an entrepreneur in. So that's another avenue, I think, too, for people to get onto boards, is you can also build your own thing. And a lot of boards are looking for that because a lot of large companies are buying companies, bringing in new companies. How do you merge cultures? So I think there's a lot of ways to get there. I think the trick is I would encourage boards to make sure as we diversify, our candidates are bringing real skills. So when they come to the boardroom, they are bringing their voice and their perspective, but they're also bringing skill because I think it's so important that we don't just diversify by numbers, but we truly diversify by impact. And how do we make sure that as we're diversifying as boards that they really contributed? And Nancy's been an extraordinary addition to our board and made us stronger as a company. It's been very exciting to watch.
Well, that's fantastic. And kudos to you, Rob, and your team for just really taking the initiative to be intentional about how you're looking at board diversity. Kristen, I want to jump to you. And I really, this is a question that I do a lot of speaking engagements. I used to be in theater when I was in law school and in high school, but I am an introvert. And so networking has always made me feel panicked when I know that I have to walk into a room and get the business cards out and smile. I mean, what advice do you give to women who are really trying to build that network, but the thought of networking is a little bit intimidating? How do we go into those conversations? How do we prepare for that?
Well, I'm going to go to left field first. And I'm just going to say, while networking is incredibly important, you can get board seats in other ways by making sure you let people know you're aware and you're open and you're interested, and then you just work hard. I mean, my very first opportunity, again, I didn't have time for networking. I had little kids. I was just trying to keep everything together, right? So a boss's boss said, hey, would you have an interest in a not-for-profit volunteer board opportunity? And it was just, you know, an observation of my hard work, and then that I had a willingness to ask questions and be inquisitive, and that created an opportunity. So I absolutely agree. Networking is critical, and you can start really small by, you know, setting a little goal for yourself that says, I'm going to have coffee 2 times a year with someone outside my immediate circle. I'm going to do a second order connection on LinkedIn, and I'm going to ask somebody for a warm introduction, and I'm going to have coffee twice a year with 2 different people to start expanding your network. But I think first and foremost, you need to make sure that within your network, people know what you're interested in terms of board seats, and that you'd like to have those opportunities. Because you'll be amazed when you start those conversations, even in your safe zone, your small local network, your boss, et cetera, they will start having conversations, and it will just grow from there. So don't feel like you have to walk into a room of 100 people and hand out 52 business cards. That's a little aggressive for a goal. Just start in your safe zone, make your interests known, and say, hey, do you have any thoughts? And away
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. You know, we're getting close to the end of our time together, and I really want to get to each and every one of you with some closing comments that you can share with our virtual audience about just advice or tips that you have as the women on the call and some of the men on the call are thinking about their pathway to purpose. What are some things that they can do to set themselves up for that next opportunity, whether it's inside the corporation or it's as a board member or whatever that is, just some nuggets that they can be thinking about on their journey to purpose. And so, you know, Rob, if you don't mind, I'd love to start with you. You know, we'd say ladies first, but since you're the only guy on the call, we'll let you go first.
We approve.
Yes.
I think it's a great conversation. What I would say is I always encourage everybody that I tried to mentor to say, focus number one on what is the value you want to bring and can bring to any organization. And if you create value, I guarantee you opportunities will open up. And I love what Kristen was saying, right? We think a lot about networking and all these things, and they're the secret. The best opportunities are ones where you've contributed something, somebody recognizes that, and they want that on their team, because then they're bringing you in for what you do, not just because they know you and you're going to have a much bigger impact. And I would encourage people who join boards the same way is walk in with strong EQ, know when to speak up and act and when to hold back and balance. But two, how do you bring value to that boardroom? I have seen, you know, over a decade, right, some new members join boards and they're not sure how to add value and they hold back. And you still want your board members to contribute, right? What is the value you bring? And if you're hired onto the board with knowing that value, I think it empowers you to have a bigger impact. So I encourage, you know, new board members to say, what am I bringing to the board? Make sure the board's aligned and step into that new role and really make an impact.
Oh, that is fantastic. Know when to speak up and act, and know when to hold back and listen. It might not be time yet. That's really a skill set that we have to start to cultivate more, especially with our young professionals. And I used to be a young professional, but I'm about to turn 40 soon, so I don't know that I still am. And I really want to jump to you on this, that you can give us some sage wisdom on that pathway to purpose and some tips.
I'd say two things. One is to make sure that you're very laser focused on your own career and developing concrete, substantial accomplishments in your job, because if you don't do that, you're not going to have the information to share with the board about your success that would encourage them to bring you on. And stay open to opportunities, because it's going to be the people who see your work every day, the people in your network, if you have a good one, who will say, hey, this is somebody who has accomplished a lot, and how about considering this? And if you accept those opportunities, you just can't tell where it's going to lead. It'll lead somewhere really, really good.
I love it. Being very strategic with showing the work that you've done and highlighting that. Darlene, I'd like to jump to you so you can share some thoughts with our virtual audience.
Yeah, so I would say, I think we are prepared for things that we don't know when we're going through different experiences. And I think we have to go back and connect the dots and to really understand that we are prepared for what is to come. And if you start really building your confidence and knowing that you've made it through this and you've made it through that, and that builds a muscle of resilience, and that builds a muscle of discovery and experience, that you go into the board standing in your own light and being your most authentic self, right? So that is something that is so powerful, to walk into a room being secure about who you are and being okay to say, I got to learn, I've got to learn some of these pieces, but I'm here to add value. So
I love that. Sometimes we tend to want to hide some of the most authentic pieces of ourselves because we think that that's what's going to help us get to that pathway to purpose. But the more we lean into that authenticity of who we are, we bring value in different ways that we didn't realize was needed in those cultures. Kristen, I'd love for you to wrap this up for us. This has been so rich. I'm excited to get your thoughts.
Oh, no pressure on the end here. So I'm coming full circle. I come back to be open to those new opportunities. I mean, that's and also make your interests known. Just communicate, make sure folks know what you want to be doing, and then be open, take the calls, be open to having the conversations and exploring the opportunities that might come your way, whether they're career related or board related. You have to reach out and make your interest known, and then start to have those conversations and be open to it. What may not look like the right fit or something you don't understand, but ultimately it's going to open doors. It's going to add skills and tools in your toolbox that continue to make you marketable as a potential board member going forward.
I love it. And maybe do laugh in the face of new opportunity.
Every now and then
Maybe
it just makes you feel good, right?
Yes, you all have been amazing. I hope that our virtual audience is giving virtual claps right now. This has been such a rich and substantive discussion. And it is a reminder to me as I sit inside of the State House and do this work with Governor Holcomb that we have fantastic leaders across the state of Indiana who are really not only talking about it, but living and walking by example to create the types of cultures within our organizations that we want to see. So thank you, Anne. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Darlene. Thank you, Rob. It has been an honor to moderate this discussion. And I am going to turn it back over to our wonderful leaders, Kirsten and Shannon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to have this rich discussion with these amazing folks.
Oh, Kara, that was amazing. Thank you so much for leading that discussion. My pen was very active. I think where we started was with Betsy. We went from 10% to almost 25%. We still want to get that gap to 50-50, right? And the discussion we heard today, which really started with storytelling, the quilt concept, but then the idea of taking that leap. What's your Middle East? Where are you willing to take a risk? And I love that we heard about how you have to work hard on your qualifications and be really strategic about it from Anne. Rob talked about value and bringing that value every day. And then Darlene was able to say, yes, and the authenticity of self. So not only are you bringing that value, but who you really are and the reason you got in the room in the first place. So putting those intentions out in the world is one of the most important things that I know I learned last year during this session. And I'm so excited as we move from this discussion into our second hour, where you get to talk about your path, your journey, and how you're going to move forward. And these are the conversations we're going to have with our director coaches. Now, in addition to our panelists, our sponsors, the leadership committee, Kirsten, this next segment would not be possible without the director coaches. And you're going to see some familiar faces because we had some of our panelists who said, yes, I'd love to lead a group. But you'll also see that we have Susan and Rick joining us. And please just take a moment and read through everybody's qualifications on this slide, because this is an amazing group. Not only that, because we had a few extra people signing up toward the end, we've actually asked Betsy to also lead a group. So we're so excited to have this team of people take you to that next conversation. Now, to get into the breakout session, you should see a join here button at the bottom of your screen under the video. And if you have any technical difficulties, there is actually a help assistance on the left side of your screen as well, and technical assistance will be provided.
And for today, think 1-1-1. Make one connection, take one step in your path to the boardroom, and learn one thing. And keep in mind, outside of today, before 2021 wraps up, there are still 2 opportunities to participate in the 50-50 Women on Board sponsored workshops. On December 6th, it's our last 2021 Get on Board workshop for the year. This is very much focused for the senior career woman. And then on December 14th, this will be our last 2021 Path to the Boardroom workshop focused for mid-career women. Be sure to visit 5050wob.com to get more information about these great workshops, resources, and to register to participate before the end of the year. However, throughout the year, if you'd like to continue to be part of the Indiana conversation, you can join the Indiana 50/50 Women on Boards LinkedIn group. More importantly, if you'd like to grow this village and get involved in 2022 and contribute to the growth of this conversation across the state throughout the year, please connect with Shannon or myself on LinkedIn. We'd like to thank everybody today, especially Kara and our VIP panel, for having such a dynamic conversation. I agree with Shannon, my pencil, I got the cramps. Great insight from Anne about some local efforts happening, some collaborative intersection of industries and companies. This is the time is now, and you are a part of it. So in addition to the panel, Betsy and Betsy's team at 50/50 in California, thank you. Our leadership committee, you'll all hear from us later, but you all know how incredible this has been for you to take this journey with us as we put a path to this conversation out there. And to our director coaches, our sponsors, and especially you, our attendees, you are all busy, busy professional people, and that you are taking time out of your day today to experience the conversation, and then now in your breakout sessions have your own experience. We look forward to any feedback you'd like to share with us. We're grateful you're here. We look forward to being part of the change we want to see. And we just wish you the best of the rest of the day and enjoy your break rooms. I might pop in, and I hope to see you guys all there and having an incredible experience in your break room. Thank you to the production staff as well. With that, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the next hour, your next experience, and we'll go ahead and wrap up this first hour and move us to the second hour in your break rooms. Thank you so much.
Thank you.